Everyone. Thank you all for joining the League of Women Voters Northern Lower Michigan Public Forum tonight. A few reminders as we start. Please be sure to remain on mute during the presentation. It's best to click on speaker view instead of gallery view, so the focus is on each panelist as they present. As usual, this presentation is being recorded and will be made available on our YouTube channel with the link available on our webpage. Our webpage is lwvnlm.org. I'm Eileen Mikas, Vice President of the League of Women Voters, Northern Lower Michigan. For those of you unfamiliar with the League of Women Voters, we are a nonpartisan political organization that encourages informed participation in government. We work to increase understanding of the major public policy issues, and the League influences public policy through education and advocacy. We do not support any candidate or any political party. We do have public policy positions that inform our education and advocacy work, and we offer public forums like this one tonight on topics of community interest. We are pleased to offer tonight the public forum on housing challenges and opportunities in Northern Michigan, an issue that has become more pressing as the nature of our communities changes and housing prices become increasingly out of reach. Susan Hanna, LWV NLM member and Housing Partnership member, is the forum organizer tonight, and she will introduce the evening's topic and our speakers.
Good evening. I'm Susan Hanna. I'm a 50-year plus long member of the League of Women Voters, but I'm also a member of the Little Traverse Bay Housing Partnership. And I'm thrilled to be invited to have organized this panel for you tonight to talk about housing. Affordable housing is a problem in many parts of the country, but the issue in our area is complicated by the fact that we have largely a tourist-based economy, which creates a unique set of challenges for housing the people who actually live and work here. Tonight, we're going to hear from a panel of local experts who can explain the housing challenges in our region, and just as important, report on what we're doing to address them. The panel is going to be moderated by Scott Smith, the retiring chair of the Little Traverse Bay Housing Partnership and winner of the 2022 Housing Leadership Award from Housing North, a regional housing nonprofit focused on housing issues in Northern Michigan. Scott will talk about the history of the local housing partnership and the accomplishments that have brought us this far. He'll also moderate your questions at the end of the presentations. Our other two panel members are Andrea Jacobs, who was hired last year by Housing North and the partnership as the first full-time Housing Ready program director for Emmet County. Andrea has made all the difference in moving from good wishes to action in housing in the region. Nothing happens in housing around here that Andrea is not part of. She will detail our housing needs and challenges and successes to date. And speaking of award winners and successes, our other panel member is Sarah Ulrich, who's executive director of the Northwest Michigan Habitat for Humanity. Northwest Michigan Habitat was recently recognized as Affiliate of the Year by the State Habitat Organization, won the prestigious Chairman's Award at the Petoskey Chamber of Commerce's Breakfast of Champions, and was awarded a $1 million grant by the state of Michigan to fund more affordable housing for middle-income families in our region. Sarah clearly knows what she's talking about. Tonight, she'll review the challenges that Habitat faced on their way to this success and how they overcame them. If there's time at the end of the program, I'd like to come back and make a few suggestions. We hope we rouse so much passion and enthusiasm that you'll want to say, well, what can I do to help? And I have some suggestions. turns out it really does take a village to build one. So at this point, I'm going to turn it over to Scott, and he will take it from there. Scott?
Thank you, Susan. It's my pleasure to be here tonight, and along with Andrea and Sarah, and with the rest of you. Thank you all for joining to kind of talk about this little topic. Just a little sort of housekeeping matter at the beginning. We'd like to go through the presentations straight. But if you have any questions, please put them in the chat. Use the chat function in the Zoom, and I will monitor those as the evening goes on. And then we will try to save time at the end to come back and to answer as many of those as possible after the presentations. As Susan mentioned, I'm going to kind of set the scene a little bit organizationally, sort of where we are in terms of the housing partnership and other efforts in the region to address this issue. As she also mentioned, housing shortages and affordability are not an issue unique to Northern Michigan by any means. It's really a worldwide issue. But here in particular, it really had a beginning of sorts, in the significant reductions in housing construction and housing related labor force after the 2008-2009 recession. And we haven't recovered from that yet. Regionally, there have been a number of efforts to begin to organize people involved in the housing sector since the late 1990s, early 2000s. These were done under the umbrella of Networks Northwest, which is the regional council of governments for Northwest Michigan. And there was a housing solutions network of people that met informally over the last 20 years or so. Beginning in, I think, 2015, that Housing Solutions Network began to organize regional housing summits, a day or 2 day event that brought people together to talk about issues and identify actions that could move forward. And a couple of us from the Petoskey, Charlevoix area attended those meetings probably beginning in 2016, I think was the first that several of us went to. About that same time, in early 2017, the Petoskey Regional Chamber of Commerce put together a committee to kind of look into what were the major issues that were impacting the ability of local businesses to hire and retain workforce. And that committee then sort of came to a very strong conclusion that the lack of housing, the affordability of housing was one of those major issues. And those two streams, as it were, came together in early to mid 2017 led to what has become the Little Traverse Bay Housing Partnership. There were some initial meetings of 4 or 5 of us who were part of those two efforts, the regional summits and the Chamber's Workforce Committee, and began to meet in 2017 as an intentional sort of grassroots effort to try to bring together all of the people and all of the different sectors in our community who touched on housing in one way or the other, to see if together we could make some progress where individually we were not succeeding. We'll talk a little bit more about the housing partnership, but for those of you who want to keep up to date, if you're not already sort of on the mailing list for that, the partnership now puts out a quarterly newsletter. The last one just came out a week or so ago. And you can find that at our website, which is LTBHP, Little Traverse Bay Housing Partnership.org. From the beginning, the housing partnership had kind of 4 main goals. One was to raise awareness about the issue, and really sort of went to the root of the importance of citizen engagement in this issue, both to become aware of the issue, but then also to try to influence their local governments. A second focus has been on changing local government policies, but also to some extent provide input into state policies as well. A third area is to address the financial gap that always these days seems to affect the housing that is affordable by people who sort of live and work here. And then a final area was to identify and stimulate projects to actually be a catalyst to create more housing units on the ground. It's taken a little longer to do that than we had envisioned, but that is beginning to happen. That last piece in particular was particularly difficult for an all-volunteer group, such as we were. And so, as we'll talk in a minute, we have gone to into a partnership with Housing North to create the position that Andrea occupies, which is a kind of county-based regional director for our housing efforts. During the same time period, other counties were also organizing local groups as well, but Emmet and Charlevoix were the first to do that. And Emmet was the only one that did that without local government as a convener. And that was intentional, but something that later we found that was something we needed to address. In 2018, the Housing Solutions Network kind of evolved into a formal nonprofit organization called Housing North. That has become the vehicle for a number of different things, but also for creating those county-based positions to support local initiatives. That was done first in Charlevoix County, and the Housing Ready program director there worked with 3 city-based groups in Charlevoix, Boyne City, and in East Jordan. And then Emmet County was the second. Initially, we had a part-time position, which began in mid-2020. Emily Meyerson was our first person in that position. It became quickly evident that this was not really something that could be done part-time. And so we shifted gears a little bit and created a full-time position, which is the position that Andrea occupies. And beginning about a year ago, a little more than a year ago, in January last year, Andrea joined us, and as Susan mentioned, has made all the difference. So let me hand over to her, and she can tell you a little bit more about the various causes of the problem here and some of the things that are going on in Emmet County and maybe a little bit in Charlevoix County as well to address those. So thank you very much, Andrea.
Thank you, Scott. Appreciate that and all the work that went into putting me in place because I love it. Best job ever. Let's make sure that you guys can see my screen here. Good. Okay. So just to introduce myself, I'm Andrea, as Scott said, and I'm the Emmet County Housing Ready Program Director for Housing North. And I just want to talk a little bit about Housing North as an organization to introduce it to you as a group here. We build awareness, influence policy, expand capacity so communities can create housing solutions that meet their unique needs. I'm going to break that down a little bit. One way that we build awareness as Housing North as an organization has sponsored some regional housing analyses. In 2021, they did the regional housing analysis, which was broken down by county as well. And this spring, there will be a new housing needs assessment that will be published, sponsored by Housing North, again, regionally, but also broken down by individual counties, because we know that this demand is something that we can feel. We don't have to go very far in our lives to speak to somebody or be impacted by this at the individual level, but we also need to know statistically and realistically what we're facing and what we need. One way that Housing North influences policy is by participating in the Housing Michigan Coalition, which was pretty successful in pushing forth some important legislation this past year, and also pretty crucial in helping develop the Office of Rural Development to be a voice kind of regionally for us in the rural communities up here. We don't always have activism at the state level and access to some of the funding mechanisms that have been in play for a long time in the larger economies. And the best way that Housing North expands capacity, which is, amplifying time and energy and talent in communities, is putting housing ready staff in place, which, like Scott said, the Little Traverse Bay Housing Partnership was immensely crucial to creating a space for me in Emmet County and being a support team and a really powerful network stepping into this space and being able to sort of hit the ground running. I am a member of the community, so I am somewhat embedded, but their connections and the work that they have done previously up to my placement in this role was really, really crucial. The vision of Housing North is that Northwest Michigan will be a place where families of all income levels can find homes that are safe and affordable. And I think that that's a really important to acknowledge. Here's our impact zone, these 10 counties of Northwest Michigan. But when we speak about affordability, it's really not about necessarily how much everybody makes as an individual or a family, but really about how much it costs to be here and how much we might be spending on our housing. And so when we take a look at this, the rent burden in our 10 county region, rather than go through the statistics, like the impact of this visual chart tells us that almost half of our citizens across the region are rent burdened. They are paying more than they can afford for their housing. And that's where Housing North, and I think most of us in the community are acknowledging this isn't a small segment of the population that we're trying to address because of their limited ability financially. This is almost everybody except a very small portion at the super top because of their abundance financially. Basically, everybody else is affected by this affordability component for us. And that, from a basic economic standpoint, is saying, okay, well, if it's too expensive and we have this high demand, we need to sort of compensate with supply. So what is the demand around here? So this is our regional sort of assessment a few years ago. These numbers, again, are kind of old. But across our 10 counties, not one of them is without demand. Every single one of our counties needs more houses, is behind in residential development, and is behind significantly, if you take a look between the purple and the green, for rental units. And not to discount the ownership opportunities and the stability that lends to communities. I really think that's an important component as well. But from a demand side, our rental units are really, really high. Emmet County, for example, we need like 1,300 units. Sarah has better statistics on that one. I kind of skipped over that slide for time's sake. But the part that I wanted to highlight from this graph is this population is drawn from current residents that would move within the community, as well as those who would move here. So when Scott talks about our employers or our economic partners that really have the opportunity to grow, but can't hire and replace maybe their retiring professionals or just expand into a larger staff, we also have a lack of mobility within all of our housing supply. So people are staying in homes that don't necessarily suit their needs. This lack of inventory and diversity is highlighted in the 2021 needs analysis here that talks about in Emmet County, 2,288 homes, both ownership and rental, dwelling units in general, are needed by 2025. 73% of our current housing in Emmet County is single family dwellings. So if you took that and said, okay, just within our county, 2,300 units, but you multiplied that by our whole region, which the demand established was at 15,000 units, and limited that to single family dwellings, we might be pretty uncomfortable with that level of suburban sprawl. So we need to start addressing these different dwelling units, designs, density levels, impact within economic centers and the infill there, which gives everybody better access. The most powerful thing that we can understand for our community housing needs is our lack of variety. And I think For me, as somebody who's encouraging our areas to our townships and our municipalities and our villages, which all have their own unique identity, to understand what has been hindering their development, or what is a barrier for their development. Part of that has to do with the myopic version of the American dream home. And there's been a little bit too much of one kind of house and not enough of everything else. So instead of focusing on prices and affordability, what I like to do from a community standpoint and talking with local officials and planning commissions is talking about community design and prioritizing access over affordability. Because if we put the people where the action is, then it's easier for us to build our lives, and it is instantly more affordable. So abundance of home choices allows people to choose something that matches their needs better. If you are ready to downsize or ready to increase your home size, if you need to be closer to work, or you need a bigger yard and need to be farther out, all of those things require the mobility within the housing market that we just don't have right now. And then understanding that from an affordability standpoint, commuting is expensive. And time is valuable. You know, quality of life is something that we prioritize up here, and commuting time takes away from everything from our hobbies to our families to our ability to engage in our communities in a meaningful way. And thinking about it as we transition into a more modern climate and environment, mixed use and high density is an asset and not a punishment. A lot of people are making choices to be closer in, to have smaller dwellings, to have less sort of repair burden and oversight of their homes. They're living in places, in apartments on purpose, or rental units or condos, because they don't need or want to have the burden of home ownership or home care, and that has to be accounted for as well. So it's not a problem to create those as an option, but we also need to be mindful of all the other options of dwelling units, and that can impact people across their income spectrum, also across their phases of life. So we need to start planning for people and not buildings. And this is a journey and a transition that I am constantly trying to frame, as you can imagine, within our communities, and thinking with planning commissions and thinking with community members and with advocates about where and how we want to grow. We need to be mindful and intentional, because we're growing regardless. So if we can prescribe where this is, where we're leading the growth, and we can identify what we want it to look like and how we want it to feel and how we want to increase the access and engagement for our community members, then we will be more successful in our community design. And we already know what makes amazing livable communities. There's many examples of it, and statistics prove that density and variety create more vibrancy and better stability, and that makes a better quality of life. And a lot of that does not necessarily have to do with a price tag and our lower income or higher income or subsidies or affordabilities. A lot of that just has to do with us understanding that we want to be where the people are, and we want to give our people, all of our people, our residents and our renters and our homeowners, all access to that same quality of life. So in Emmet County, we have seen that transition, and it is a real shining example, I would say, at the county level. Our planning and zoning department, Tammy Dornenberg, has been a real pioneer in addressing some of the ordinance language, some of the challenges and barriers that we have in play from a zoning standpoint, and accommodating that in order to make space and include a variety of dwelling units and some infill that is within all of our comfort zones and consistent with our priorities from a quality of life standpoint, from our land conservancy, from our, our engagement in the outdoors and our green space and our farmlands and all of that kind of stuff. So she has been very instrumental in breaking down some of those barriers from a zoning standpoint. And I think that's super important. For communities that don't have Tammy Dornberg in place, the Michigan Association of Planners has spent the past couple of years creating the zoning reform toolkit, which is sort of a residential map for housing infill, better design, better access, and stronger communities. And so that is a free PDF. It's comprehensive, both from a sort of strategic standpoint and from the language examples for ordinance changes. You'll see there, planningmichigan.org, zoning reform for housing. You can just click on it, it'll download right to you. So that has been a real game changer for some of our smaller townships and municipalities that would like to take a look at some of this stuff and haven't been able to map it out for themselves. So now we've established our demand and we have put ourselves more housing ready. But things are still not as easy as we thought they would be. It's a very difficult, time-consuming process, and it's a bit pithy. But the way that we think about it is these barriers: labor, lumber, land, and laws. So this is financial. This is logistical. There's access. The real estate burden. Sarah will go into that in great detail. But the laws, and addressing our ordinance language from a community design standpoint is where we can start to be as housing ready as possible throughout all of our counties. But the antidote to these barriers, I would say, in my opinion, is leadership. And I think being mindful of this audience specifically, to take a look at that leadership component and not just who has been empowered necessarily, but who can be impactful. And you can see volunteers and enthusiasts like Susan and Scott can be immensely impactful in their communities and become leaders. And that's what we need. And that's what we're depending on here: community members, government leaders and voters, nonprofit visionaries like our Petoskey Harbor Springs Area Community Foundation, who really stepped out of their comfort zone and created the Housing Solutions Fund and actually purchased some property in order to ensure the success or contribute to the success of a workforce rental project, the Lofts at Lumber Square in Petoskey. And that was definitely new for them. It was definitely out of the box for their board. And they looked at it and said, hey, we're going to do this. This is what our community needs. This is going to be our next biggest step. And we need that on all sides. Advocates and employers and developers, even some for-profit developers, even some developers that can look at a community and say, hey, what do you want and where do you want it? Because we're ready to step up to the plate here, and we know you have a demand, and we're ready to provide to the degree that we can. Now, one of our most important leaders is Sarah Ulrich, the executive director of Habitat for Humanity. So I am going to pass it off to her because she is making huge strides, and one of our only projects right now that has crossed over from the pipeline into the actual dirt and into the actual hands of our community members. So Sarah.
Thank you. Well, thank you. That was a very generous introduction. Let me get my presentation up really quick. Okay. I love to give everyone as full of a picture as I possibly can of all of the things that we're doing at Habitat, but I have been warned that they will put me on mute if I go too long. So I will do the best I can to give you a pretty robust overview, but in as timely manner as possible. So before diving into the work, I wanted to give you, some basic information about who we are. So Northwest Michigan Habitat for Humanity is an affiliate of Habitat International. So essentially we operate under an umbrella of rules and regulations, but have flexibility in customizing our programs to fit the needs of our community. Our affiliate was founded in 1990. We are a licensed and insured builder. We're also a financial lender, social services provider, housing advocate. So on M119 next to Petoskey Brewing. If you know the old Sears location, we actually purchased that building in 2019. And so we had a more permanent place for our restore and our administrative office. So our mission is to eliminate housing poverty, ensuring all of our residents have safe, decent, and affordable places to call home. And so we do this by expanding current housing stock through new home construction, through the rehabilitation of distressed housing, as well as the repurchase of homes that we have sold through our program to keep them in the affordable market. We also fulfill this mission by ensuring existing housing stock stays in good, safe condition through our critical home repair program. And so this is a program we have that offers, structural, home system, energy efficiency, accessibility, and weatherization services. So all of our applicants who work through our program must either live or work in Emmet or Charlevoix County. Our programs are income restricted, and people throw a lot of terms around like ALICE or low to moderate income, working class, workforce, missing middle. So yes, all of that is what we're talking about. So for our home ownership program, that minimum income of 30 currently, and traditionally our program has been capped at 80% of the area median income. However, we that recently to 120% of the area median income, just because we were seeing such a huge demand in that middle moderate income range in our area. And so just to put that into perspective, for a household of 4, that's $94,000 a year in annual income. There are a lot of misconceptions out there about our program, so I'll quickly just run through some of the basic requirements of our program. We do have that sweat equity component, so 200 hours of sweat equity. That includes all educational hours. Program partners do go through mandated educational courses, so that includes things like budgeting and credit counseling and first-time homebuyer education. We also have a requirement that all of our home buyers save a minimum of $1,000 from personal sources for a down payment. Habitat homes are purchased and they are sold at fair market appraisal. So our applicants must go through the process of being approved for a mortgage. And then we support them in that purchase by helping them obtain down payment assistance through third-party sources. And then we also offer some 0% interest gap between that mortgage price and that fair market value. So when the sale is complete, their home, they own the land, they pay taxes, they have insurance on their property, all of those things that come with home ownership. We also do hold what we call like a first right of repurchase agreement. So that allows us in the future, if those homeowners decide that they're ready to move on from that property, that we have the option to buy that back. And that's how we can retain those homes in the affordable market. So I mentioned we also have a repair program, and so that is based on income. So just for example, if we have a household that comes to us and make, area median income, they're going to repay us 60% of those total repair costs, and they can do so up to 7 years. So it ends up very affordable repayment, percent interest. We also have a new senior repair program that we're kicking off that allows our seniors, if they're on very restricted incomes, to defer any repayment until they decide that, to sell the property in the future. So our programs have a very broad impact that really lasts for generations, because when you're investing in housing, you're investing in the long-term success of that family that purchases the home, but also the community and our economy as a whole. And we could spend like hours just going over the different ways that housing impacts our community, but I'm going to just try to highlight a couple of quickly. So as I mentioned, our program partners are, completing these educational courses and things like that. So they're increasing lifelong skills. They're becoming more self-sufficient and less social services and government assistance programs. Studies have shown that children of homeowners are far more likely to graduate high school and succeed in post-secondary education. And I think, one thing COVID really taught us is how important a safe home is to our health. Stability and safety impact health and wellness on so many levels. Housing is also great for our economy. Things that have already been mentioned today is retaining our workforce, supporting property taxes, increasing and maintaining school enrollments, as well as establishing year-long customers to support our local businesses and services. So now that I've kind of gone over, who we are, I want to kind of talk a little bit about how we have gotten to where we are in our operations. And so, everybody kind of knows tourism is a huge industry in our area, and a tourist-based economy comes with and really the pandemic caused those to spike. We started to see property at an all-time demand. Unlike ever before, we were seeing, sight unseen cash purchases, typically, 30% or more over asking prices. So really just beating out local families competing for those homes. In addition, the demand for high-end new home construction, as well as, remodels and expansions of existing housing has really increased. And so that's putting a strain on our limited skilled trades workforce that we have here. And so that's really causing those costs to increase for, subcontracted work, if you can even get on their schedule. I think it's really important to know that when we're talking about this, 32% of existing housing in Emmet County, that's roughly 6,000 single family homes just in Emmet County alone, are non-homesteaded properties. And so these are homes that are being used as vacation homes, and more housing, as well as what was long-term rentals being converted into short-term vacation rentals. So again, just really displacing a lot of families that don't really have anywhere to turn to after that and are typically forced to, leave the area. Too much detail. Andrea mentioned that we had done, this market analysis in 2019. And so, it was no surprise that we were seeing that we had a demand for, 850 for purchase homes and 2,600 rentals in Emmet and Charlevoix County. And so we can only assume that since the pandemic, that we'll see those numbers increase with this new study that is going to be coming out soon. But, we also have a much higher cost of living. And so I think it's important to know, if you kind of look at that chart graph on the right, that our cost of living in Emmet County is similar to Oakland and Washtenaw County. So, we really have that high cost paired with that tourism economy. I like to use as a good kind of point of reference, because I know that anytime I go on there and kind of look at the openings at the hospital, there's typically 200 positions open. And that's not just entry-level positions, that's nurses and doctors as well. And so when you think about this, this hospital serves a huge 22-county region. And if they're having that much of a deficit in staff, then how, are we getting critical healthcare in our community as well? So just really to show that impact that housing has at all levels and all income brackets, Andrea was saying. So in planning out our work, we, kind of conducted this environmental assessment and really took a look at our challenges and opportunities. And so obviously we know that our community has an immediate need for a lot of home construction. So as an organization, we needed to find a way to build faster. We also have limited access to volunteers in our area. And I know that's strange for some people to hear, with Habitat being known as a heavily volunteer base. But we have seen a drastic decrease in engaged volunteers over the last decade. This, loss of volunteerism is actually a nationwide issue. However, the seasonality of our community and our aging population seems to compound this trend as well. We also have a very acute shortage of skilled trades professionals. And we also have to deal with the reality that construction costs have increased 40% or more since the pandemic. So we were really looking at this and we said, okay, how do we address this demand while also overcoming all of these, very major barriers? And so, first, to overcome that, leaders and trades professionals and build more quality homes faster, we now build almost all of our homes using a modular product. I want to stress that using modular is not cheaper. They are constructed with all the same materials as a site-built home, meeting all of our higher than average energy and accessibility standards. So costs and labor are very similar to traditional construction. The only real difference being that they are constructed in an environmentally controlled, brought to us in two pieces. So, once they're completed, they're considered no different. However, the side is that it takes less of our affiliates' time, less of our staff's time. And so it therefore reduces our per unit operational expenses while also allowing us to increase our output. We've also focused on growing our internal construction team. When I began working at Habitat in 2017, we had one, sorry, my finger is kind of blurry, but we had one construction manager. And so I'm really happy to report we now have a team of 6 working each and every day managing this increased workload. So, oops, sorry about that, hang on. So of course, we've got all these things going on, and one of the biggest factors is, okay, how do we pay for this work? And so we would develop to engage in a bigger and more meaningful way. And we're accomplishing this goal through advocacy, through strategic partnerships and relationships in our capital campaign. And we call this campaign Foundations for Our Future, with the goal of building 43 homes by 2025. We've raised just over $3 million of our $5 million fundraising goal and hope to close out this campaign later this year. So next I'm going to play a short video for you about our campaign. It is a little outdated because this was created before we kicked off our project. And so now many of our homes are now underway, but I think it gives you a really good idea of the work we're trying to accomplish. And then when it's done, I'll dive into some more specifics about the projects we have going on. right. So I'm going to go through some of our projects we're working on. Some are featured in the video that you just got to watch, especially this one. So this is a development in Oden that we actually finished in 2022. And this was kind of our pilot project to test out using modular construction at our affiliate. The land for this project was donated by our county's land bank. It consisted of 3 very distressed homes, one with a double lot. Before accepting the property, the township demolished 2 of the structures, which were beyond saving. And we also split the double lot, giving us 3 lots to build new modular homes on, in addition to one that we remodeled, which you can see to the left of this photo. And so starting at the bottom right corner of your screen, you can see the home that was built in 1890, and that was completely gutted and transformed. The other 3 sites have new modular homes, and we were very happy with the quality and efficiency with excellent energy audit ratings. For us, this was the first project in recent history where we had several homes side by side in a very visible location. The partnership of the land bank and township and many funders for this project resulted in increased community awareness about our program. And I would say it was a launching point for our organization, giving the community an opportunity to really see our impact and tour some of our homes. And the home that's on the top right corner was actually the first home completed under our Foundations for Our Future campaign. Next, we have our Lantern Lane development. This is in the village of Alanson. The land for the 6-acre development was donated to our affiliate back in 2015, and we've been slowly building homes in the community since. The first 4 homes that you'll see on the slide here were site-built homes. Those are 1 through 4. Switching over to modular will allow us to get this development finished much quicker. We are currently working on 2 modular homes, which are sites 5 and 6, and we're actually selling site 5 this Friday. So we have a new homeowner this week. Sites 7 and 8 will be completed by 2024. And it's just great. It's actually a great case study, because when we offer tours for these homes, you really can't tell which house was site built and in which home was a modular. They all look very similar, and it's a great little street. So we still do a lot of infill projects, and this land comes to us mostly by donation. So this project is a great example of that. This home is completed in East Jordan, and we should be selling this one in the next couple of weeks as well. But we were able to purchase this lot. There had been a house fire there, and the owners decided to sell it. And so we purchased it for $26,000, and that was with support from the Charlotte County Community Foundation. So this was a great spot. We call it our unicorn because it had public water and sewer, which is very rare for us to find. So it's a great little project. Each year, we also build with the Pellston High School Trades Program. So we've got pictured the students that built our home for us in 2020 and the family that purchased the home. We had to take a little break because of COVID, but we're back up running this year's class. And I think this is just an amazing program because it's helping us not only address our housing needs, but also getting young people in trades profession. And so this is the Meadowlands subdivision. This is our largest project that we've tackled to date. This subdivision began in the early 2000s by a private developer, and construction came to a stop at the onset of the market crash. So the last home in this community was built in 2007. And since, the property has been sitting untouched until we purchased the 32 remaining lots in 2020. So on the map, you can see here that outline in yellow. That is what encompasses 50 acres of the Meadowland. And so you can kind of see in that aerial view to the left where it's more field-like. That's where the name the Meadowlands comes from. That's kind of phase 1, and we're working towards the to the right side of that image through phases 2 and 3. So here's just in green, blue, and orange, phase 1, phase 2, and phase 3 of that project. And then the homes in gray are actually existing homes that were built previously. We currently have 9 phase 1 homes close to completion, with a few that are pictured on the screen with all the snow. We already have 5 more homes built and awaiting delivery and 4 more under construction this month. So as soon as weather allows, we'll have at least 9 more homes on site and as many as 6 more coming throughout the summer and fall if all kind of goes as planned. So with that, our main focus right now is finishing out our fundraising campaign with about $2 million left to raise as we continue to get these homes complete. Looking ahead, we continue to seek new land opportunities and momentum. We continue to spread awareness to grow our relationships at both a business and donor level. And we seek new sources of funding, learn about different programs that are available to help us continue to adapt to what seems like an ever-changing future. So with that, I want to thank you for your time and interest in this important topic. We need support from every community member to make this work possible. I'd like to ask you to consider a personal or business financial donation to our project. We are tackling roughly 10% of our single family housing stock needs, and that's big for one nonprofit. With over 85% of our funding coming from local donors, your support is crucial to making this possible. And the great thing is your dollars stay right here in our community. Other ways to get involved, donating labor and materials helps us get these homes built faster and more affordably. Donating land is a driving force for where we will build next. We accept land as well as existing homes or properties with the potential of becoming. To our Habitat Restore helps us generate funds for our programs. Get your employees involved by creating a payroll deduction program or by hosting a fundraising event. Also, maybe consider creating a down payment assistance program for your own staff if you're a business owner, so that when they're ready to purchase a home, you're helping them to overcome those cost barriers. And then, of course, advocacy is so important. It's how we reach the community, how we increase that knowledge about our need and get the word out about our mission. So, please reach out if you'd like to get involved in any capacity, or if you'd like to apply for a program, or if you'd like to come take a tour, we're happy to provide those as well.
Thank you, Sarah. That's wonderful. You guys are doing great work. Just want to, her last points there, I think, are a good segue. I'm going to sort of hand back to Susan and maybe Andrea here a little bit. One question that was asked in the chat during the presentations was, what can we do to encourage Representative Bergman to vote for more federal funding for affordable housing? One of the areas that Sarah just highlighted and that Susan did at the beginning was this sort of advocacy and awareness raising. This is something that the Little Traverse Bay Housing Partnership has done. There's also a broader coalition within the state of Michigan, Housing Michigan Coalition, and Housing North has been a real key player in that, as has the Petoskey Chamber of Commerce and others. And so, the usual writing letters, doing what you can to contact your representatives at the federal level, but also at the state and local level is an effective way. And has resulted. I think Andrea mentioned that there was at the end of last year some very successful, came to fruition several advocacy works and resulted in several new state housing policies that were signed by the governor late last year that should make a major step towards improving the affordability and availability of houses. Let me just maybe mention one more thing to kind of sum up the overall efforts that have been going on here the last several years in Emmet County. Certainly Habitat's the program that Sarah described is one of the sort of stars, one of the primary projects that's going on here. But actually there are there are projects that in close to 300 housing units that are in fairly advanced stages of development, either under construction now or are expected to be under construction later this year. So As I mentioned, this was a little longer than our original vision for how long it might take to begin to see some additional hopes in this area, but there are a number of projects that are underway right now, and it is really the result of efforts by a lot of people, including many of you. Susan, let me hand back to you. I know you wanted to maybe wrap up with a few more thoughts on what people could do to help advance this issue in our region.
Yes, on your screen, I have a list of things you can do to help. Sarah makes it sound so easy. Oh, well, you just bring in these houses and you put them together, and it was so easy.
Oh, trust me, it is not easy.
No, I mean, the amount of work that went before just bringing the subject up, getting the zoning rules changed, getting the building codes changed, creating the funds to make all this happen is a huge task. And while we might have 300 houses under development, we need how many? A lot more than that. So I've got 3 ideas of things that you could do to help. One is to learn more. And I think a couple of you mentioned, we have a newsletter that recently was published. And it's there on the screen. You can go read the partnership newsletter. Housing North has an excellent newsletter, and that one also was recently published. If you go to their website and look, and on there they advertise all kinds of ways you can learn more, different webinars and so on. And there's one about 3D printing houses that I can't wait to sign up for. I just think it sounds so cool. So following what's going on in the housing conversation through Housing North, through Habitat, through the partnership. Spreading the words, talk about it to other people. If people bring up, well, no, we don't want any apartment buildings in Emmet County, you might say, well, great. So when you call 911, I guess you hope somebody answers. Get involved, join, volunteer, advocate, stand up and speak in favor of some proposal when it's coming to a hearing at the Planning Commission. Contribute, as Sarah mentioned, lots of places, the local foundations are really stepping up to be helpful. And then the last thing over here is really take a few steps. Get yourself appointed to a local planning commission or the Land Bank Authority or the Brownfield Authority and make decisions about housing. Go on and get yourself elected to the township, to the county, the governing bodies. Tomorrow night, the county planning commission is meeting about some significant changes in zoning ordinances. And the last thing is do it yourself, like step up and as a business owner or as a personal person with others, create ways to do something yourself. And it's just as easy as it looks, right, Sarah, to make it all happen. And it will take a village to make the village. And we hope that you will follow up and learn more about housing and find ways that you personally can become involved in this effort. So, Eileen, I'm going to turn it back to you to finish up here.
Okay, thank you. Thanks again to all our panelists. This concludes our public forum. We have a few announcements before we sign off. We have a newly formed Equal Rights Advocacy Committee. Anyone interested in aspects of equity, gender issues, and equal rights is welcome to join and give inputs on topics to explore. The meetings are by Zoom and they are held on the last Thursday of every month at 10 a.m. If you're interested, please let us know or email info@lwvnlm.org. Our March forum will be hosted by the new Equal Rights Advocacy Committee and will focus on celebrating Women's History Month, including a presentation created by a student member as a project for Petoskey High School to highlight the recent history of women's rights. As usual, all members will get the Zoom link several days before the event. We hope you will attend, not only to celebrate Women's History Month, but also to support the efforts of the youth in our league. And with that, I'd like to again say thanks to Andrea, Scott, and Sarah for their information they provided us tonight. And that concludes our forum. So thank you very much, everyone, and good night.
Thank you.
Okay, I turned off the recording. Bye-bye. Thanks again.